Hi everyone, my name is Zuhaib. In this tutorial, I will show you how you can edit multiple compositions using the bulk edit function of slides and grids. It is also very helpful to edit a template or project where multiple placeholder compositions of images or footages are used, or compositions that have an almost similar structure. We can use this to add, remove, replace, or change the visibility of layers for multiple compositions, like adding a single logo or watermark to all compositions at once, or filling up the placeholder compositions with the selection of images, footages, etc. You can also edit composition items inside a grid. The process to edit the compositions is simple, and I will guide you step by step on how it works. The first part of the process is setting the selection for the items to add or replace and the compositions we are going to edit. Then we need to set the target layers inside the compositions that we want to edit with bulk edit operations. We can set these target layers using layer indices or their names. So layers that will match would be set as target layers for any of the bulk edit operations. I will explain this further in detail later in this video. I have this template open from Envato for demonstration purposes. You can see that it has footage placeholders that we will edit. We also need some images or footages to add or replace into these compositions. Let's start with setting the selection. I come to the segregation methods later. The comp in defines in which panel the compositions we are going to edit exists, which are these placeholders in our case. In items from, we can tell the script from where to use the selected items that we will add or replace inside the editable compositions. In our case, we will use these footages that I have imported. If we are using remove or visibility, then we only need to set comps in the selection options, as the other ones will be disabled. In other methods like add and replace, we are going to consider these selection options because we need to use the additional items to use with these methods. Then we have segregation methods. As we can use different item types to add or replace, these can be text, shapes, footages, videos, or compositions, etc. It will help the script to discriminate between the items to add and the editable compositions based on the selected item types. The option Project versus Layers panel items has the advantage of using composition items inside the other composition items. But both selections should be in the opposite panels, so it helps the script to discriminate between these. In this method, you can use any layer type including text, shapes, footages, videos, including compositions. For example, we want to fill these footage placeholders with the new images or footages. But as both selections have just compositions and belong to the same panel, that will confuse the script to discriminate. So what we can do is grab one of these selections to the layers panel temporarily and use it from here, and set the selection accordingly. Or otherwise, don't use composition items to add and select images or footages instead if you want to use the same panel, which we are going to discuss in this next option, which is comp versus other item types. In this method, we can use both selections from the same panel, but it won't allow us to use composition items to add or replace inside the other composition items. You can use other layer types like text, shapes, footages, and videos to add or replace in the selected compositions. So now if we select these footage placeholder compositions and these images to add to these, then the script will discriminate between both item types easily, even inside the same panel. This is the distribution section, and you can set here how items should be distributed inside the editable compositions and whether should they repeat if the number of target layers or compositions are more than the selected items. As in the project, you can see we have 8 placeholders to add items into, and it isn't necessary if we select the same number of items to use. It may not make sense for this template, but in case you are using footages just for a demo or any other purposes. The repeat items if less checkbox will allow you to repeat the items if all the items are used once. If this is not checked, then the operation will stop when all the items are used once inside the compositions. This distribution option allows you if you want to distribute the selected items per composition basis or per individual layer basis inside those compositions. I have prepared an animation to demonstrate these so you can understand exactly how these work. Here we have 3 items on the top that we want to add to the selected compositions below. The green color corner represents the target layer is found inside that composition, and red means no target layer was found. Let's start with per comp distribution type without repeat items enabled. It will assign single item per composition. You can see all 3 items are used once and added in the first 3 compositions by ignoring the next 3 compositions because we didn't have any additional items selected for those. Also see how item number 2 is ignored, and this is because we have selected skip item with comp in the if couldn't find any target dropdown, which specifies how to handle the compositions with no target layers inside. If you go inside the composition, you can see that item number 1 is used for all 3 target layers found inside this composition while using per comp distribution type. If we enable repeat items checkbox, then even if we have selected fewer items, they will repeat to be used for all the selected compositions. If we select continue sequence, then no item will be ignored if there was no target layer in any composition, but instead it would rather be assigned to the next composition. You can see here composition 2 had no target layer, so item number 2 didn't get wasted and assigned to the composition 3, and the same for others. Repeat items checkbox works the same here, and if disabled, then will stop operation if all 3 were used once. In per layer distribution type, the items will be assigned to the individual layers inside each composition instead of one item per composition. And item sequence in each comp is set to start over, which means the assigned items group for a single composition is assigned separately to all the compositions. And all compositions will get the same set of items, which will then be distributed inside those according to the found target layers starting from item number 1. In this composition, as we can see, target layer 1 got item number 1, target layer 2 got item number 2, and so on. You can also see the target 4 didn't get any item because we just have 3 items and repeat items checkbox is disabled. But it won't stop the operation and will go to the next composition as its items are not linked with other compositions items. Let's enable repeat items, and now if the target layers are more than the selected items, then the items will be repeated. As you can see, target layers 4 and 5 which were left will also get item number 1 and 2 by repetition. And in the next composition, it will start again from item number 1. The continuous option works a bit differently. It links all the compositions together along with their target layers. Let's try this by disabling repeat items. All 3 items are assigned, but one target layer is left. And also, as all compositions are linked, so it will stop the operation because it has no items left for the target layers or compositions. But if you enable repeat items checkbox, then it will restart the items. You can see items 1, 2, 3 are assigned, then restarted, and target 4 got item number 1 again. It will continue, and in composition 3, the target layer will get item 2 where it stopped in the last composition. In the same way, the items will get repeated for all the next compositions and target layers. So that was how the distribution of items works, and I hope you are now familiar with all these settings for use in your next project. The next section is for fitting options, but we will get back to these shortly. Let's move on to the set target section. Here we can set target layers inside each composition to be affected by bulk edit operations. We can set the target layers using their indices and names or using both of these. If we select this option, then we can target any layer from the selected compositions using its layer index starting from number 1. If we enable use max available if exceed, Then no matter if we have given an index that was bigger than the number of layers found in any composition, it will target the last available layer inside that composition. Let's say in this composition we have 18 layers, but if we put 20, it won't stop and would rather select the last layer, which is 18 in this composition. So this way you can also target only the last layers in the compositions by using a bigger number as a max index that you think will bypass the total number of layers in any composition. Or you can also type last in the index field and can target the last layer easily inside all compositions this way. In by name, you can type any string that you want to search within the layers names to set them as targets if matched. There are additional options to check when searching within the names. Contains is more flexible and can find the string in any position within the layer's name. Let's say if we want to search for this layer that has shape in its name, we can type shape here. If you choose start with, then the layer name must start with this text string to set that as target. As the layer name is starting already with keyword shape, so it will set both of these as target layers. But if we enable end with, then these layers will be ignored as they don't have the keyword shape at the end of their names. The checkbox use first match only is helpful if you want to target only the first matched layer inside any composition. So it will stop looking for more target layers after setting this first layer with shape as target in the composition. If you choose use both, then you need to use layer index and text to search in its name to set it as a target. This way, both should be matched to set a layer as a target. For example, if you put layer index 3 and then put shape to search in layer names, then it will ignore layer 3 as it doesn't include the keyword shape in its name or vice versa. Let's discuss these fitting options now. We can use these while adding new layers to the compositions, so in case of items have different sizes, they will fit inside their compositions according to the selected fitting option. The first option is fill the comp, which will fill the entire composition by scaling the item proportionally and pushing extra pixels outside the composition boundary. To show you an example, I'm going to select an image and the current composition in the project panel to show the results in the active composition. Let's find out where this composition is and also select the image to use. As both are in project panel but discriminated by their item types. One is composition and the other one is an image. That's what we have set here in the segregation method, comp versus other item types. Also set both comp in and items from to project as well. I will use the add method here, but we'll discuss its other options later. Let's hide these layers to show that clearly. If we now click add without any fitting option, we need to set target as well. Let's set it to index 1 to add layer on top. Now add again. You can see the item is added to the selected composition, which is the active composition, and the image size is not matching with the composition size. Let's undo it and start testing the other fitting options. The first one is fill the comp. It will fill the entire composition by scaling the image proportionally. Fit to comp will fit the item to the composition boundary by scaling it proportionally, and if any from the width or height is not proportionally equal to the composition's width or height, then it will produce an empty area there. The other one is fit by width. It will fit the item by its width to the composition's width and will scale the height proportionally. The next one is fit by height. It will fit the item by its height to the composition height and will adjust the width proportionally. Then we have stretch to fit. As you can see, it stretched the item to fit its width and height to the composition's width and height perfectly, and it won't maintain the proportions. This option will reset the original scale value and set it back to 100, and also will remove any scale keyframes if found. In our case, the item is in project panel and it already has 100% scale by default, so will be added as it is, but it will reset the scale for layers panel items. Let's undo it Next comes placement options. The first one is paste in place. If this is checked, then the items to add or replace will be added with their original position values, especially for items from the layers panel. To show that, we need to use an item from the layers panel. Let's go back to the main composition and use this image. It also has some position keyframes. Set items from to layers now. We can now deselect this item from the project panel as we are using one from the layers panel. But as we have only set comps from this panel, then it will ignore other item types and will only use the compositions. Now if you click on add, make sure composition is active where the layer is selected. Now click again on add button. You can see it has been added as it is in the new composition with its original position. But if paste in center checkbox is enabled, then the item will be centered in its new composition. Let's undo and go back to the main composition. If I move the time indicator to 1 second and see where it is now in the composition, let's see what will happen if we run the operation now. You can see it has centered the layer at the current time and keyframes are also moved along with the layer. But the layer may still get off the center if we move the time indicator due to these keyframes. You can remove these keyframes before adding the layer if you don't want it to move. I undo it and enable these layers again, which we disabled before, and go back to the main composition. As we have now discussed all the fitting options, now start with the bulk edit methods and their options. The first method is add, and it will add the selected items to the selected compositions before or after the target layers. It has some additional options and all other methods also have, which will be displayed in this area according to the selected method. Let's say we want to add these videos into these empty placeholder compositions at the first index. As both selections are from the same panel, choose comp versus other item types, which we discussed before. Also, if we have fewer items than the compositions, then we could enable repeat items if less checkbox to repeat the items. So now, as we have set target layer with index 1, we need to tell if we want to add new item before this target layer or after it in each composition. Let's choose before to keep the new items on top. The target layers will be pushed to the next index. The add to comp start checkbox allows you to always add the layer at the start of the composition, even if it starts later in time in the current composition. Especially when items are selected from the layers panel, for example like this. But as we have selected these from the project panel, so these will always be added to the start. Now set the comps in and items from to project as both are in the project panel. And click on bulk add button. You can see here all new items are added to these placeholders and have been updated in the main composition as well. But you may notice these are not fitting to the compositions because either they are smaller than the compositions or don't fit in properly. So we could set this fitting option, fill the composition for these all. Let's undo and try again. Also, if I open a composition, you can see it is empty and there is no layer to target. So if you disable this checkbox, use max available if exceeds and run the operation again. It will say no target layer found because it found 0 layers at index 1. But if you enable this, it usually targets the last layer if the target layer is not found. But as there is no last layer, so it will just allow to add new layer at the top. And if we add item now with fill to comp enabled, you can see all are fitting perfectly now. In the same way, we can add items to grid compositions. I have this grid that has composition items in it. I have this logo that I am going to add to these compositions as a watermark. Let's select the composition layers in which we want to add the logo. You can select the whole grid if you want to add in all compositions of the grid, as the script will automatically ignore features and controller layers from a grid. Let's check some settings here regarding our selection. We need to enable repeat items if less checkbox this time, as the logo item is 1 and compositions are more than 1, so the same logo will be repeated for all these compositions. Disable the fitting option, set paste in place, and set both selections to layers. Click on the add button now. You can see the logo has been added to all the compositions in the same location as it was in the active composition. I also have prepared some additional text layers with just numbers that I want to add in all compositions at once. I just have set the blending mode to overlay. I need to select these items and compositions in the order in which I want these items to add in. Start the selection with item number 1 and then the others, and also compositions from first to last. It doesn't matter if you start selection from the items or from the compositions first. The settings seem good. Click add. You can see all the numbers have been distributed into the selected compositions in order. I can now hide these additional layers. You can add watermarks, lower thirds, or anything you like into these compositions. In the same way, you can add new images to these grid layers or replace existing ones that we will discuss shortly. The next method is remove. You can see it disabled all other settings which were not needed. We just need to choose the comps in panel. In this method, we can remove the target or opposite layers. Remove target will remove all the target layers, and remove others will keep the target layers and will remove all other layers. To show an example of this, I removed the items I just added recently in the grid compositions. I know I added those at the top, so both items, logo and text have index 1 and 2. First I set index 1 to set as target and make sure it is set to remove target. Select the compositions from which to remove and click on bulk remove. You can see the text layers which were on top have been removed. Now click again bulk remove to remove the logo as well, because after removing these text layers, these came to the top and now became the target by using the same index number 1. The next bulk edit method is replace. It will replace the target layers with the selected items. It works similarly to how the replace method works in After Effects, and both items should have valid replaceable sources. These items include video footages, images and compositions which have their sources linked to the project panel. But let's say we want to replace this text layer with this video. Check the settings for replace method. If we need to edit something in the current composition, then need to select it in the project panel. So I right click and reveal the composition in project. Then also select the video footage layer. Now set both comps in and items from to project. Make sure the index is 1 to set the first text layer as target to be replaced. Now if we click replace, it replaced the text layer with footage. It became possible due to this checkbox force replace, which enables us to replace with non-replaceable sources that is not otherwise possible in After Effects native replace function. If we disable this and try again, then it will not replace and show us an alert. Force replace actually fakes the replace process by removing the target layer and adding a new layer at its index at the same start time. Also, if an item is force replaced, then it won't retain any of the target layer's attributes, transformation and other properties, but will be added with its original properties and attributes. Let's check another example for replace, and this time we want to update or replace the images inside these grid compositions. We could do this by selecting these compositions and targeting the first layer as target layer. But let's say this time we replace these composition layers instead of their inside layers. So for this, we need to select a composition to replace inside and we select the current composition in the project panel and set it here as well. Then we need to select the items to replace these composition layers with. Now this time, as we are assigning the different items to each individual layer inside the editable composition, so we need to set distribution to per layer. Now we need to target these layers that we want to replace inside this grid composition, which we have opened here. So we need to find a pattern to target these. In our case, they all have word comb inside their names, so we can use it to target these. Let's set target by name and type comb here to search. Make sure use first match only is disabled so it can detect multiple target layers in a single composition. Now if we run the operation, you can see it replaced the grid composition layers with static images, and it also didn't break any controller or expression as it respects grid layers and manages these automatically. We could also use these fitting options if we were to add these items inside the grid compositions instead of replacing these directly. Let's move on to visibility. By using this, we can make only target layers visible while making others hidden. I go back to placeholders main composition again. Let's say you are working with a heavy template that has multiple placeholder compositions, and in each composition there are a lot of layers with or without effects. As you can see in this slide 1 composition. This is a simple example, as in some projects these could be even more. So using bulk edit's visibility feature, we can make certain layers visible only, and that way we will be able to work faster in the main composition. If need to adjust these placeholders, timings, positioning, alignments, etc., or working on other aspects by using these as reference, we can easily restore their visibilities later. Let's say we just want this last footage composition visible for reference and disable all others. We could set this first footage layer as target by searching for footage in its name and enabling use first match only. So it will use the first one and will not check for other instances. But it seems this isn't the right footage layer that we need to select. It is the last one. To target that, let's set target by index and type last in the index field. So now we need to make sure we have selected the right selection panel for these compositions. Let's click this change visibility button. You can see all the layers have been hidden other than the target ones, and it is fast to move around these now and adjust timings, positions, etc. You may notice an additional text layer here at the end, and it is visibility layer that stores the layer's original visibility states using their indices, so we can restore later easily. In additional options of visibility method, we have save our existing states checkbox. By enabling this, you can have multiple visibility layers inside any composition, and it will save a new visibility state based on the currently active layer's states. If it is disabled, then it will protect already existing visibility state layers in any composition and will not change visibilities there. You can also restore the last saved visibility state using Restore Visibility button, and it will check the last saved visibility layer found in the composition, will restore the visibilities, and will remove this text layer. In case there are more than one saved visibility layers, you can repeat this operation. Let's restore these. Select these compositions and make sure selection panel is set to layers, and click on Restore Existing States button. You can see these all are restored now as they were originally before. Also, in case you don't have any proper layer to make visible temporarily or to target, then you can add new ones temporarily at the first index to target later easily, and can remove them after use using the bulk add and remove methods. But you need to make sure the number of layers and their indices positions are same, as the visibility layer stores layers by their indices. That means if you added new layers first and then created a visibility state, then you have to first restore the visibility, as at this time number of layers didn't change, and then remove any extra added layers by targeting them. So these were all the options in the bulk edit dialog with some examples, and I hope these were helpful. You can reach out for any further queries. Thanks for watching and see you later.